So the purpose of today's webinar was really to, again, just highlight two very amazing individuals, that I've been able to work with over the last year or so, in looking at what they're doing in the face of all of the grant funding that's coming out. The potential to set up similar projects on your campuses, either directly with Mr. Foster and Fields, or to again just kind of emulate what they're doing and how they're creating new enterprises, working with large manufacturers, or potentially improving diversity within large corporations. So just wanted to quickly go over, we already had Geoff present here on what he's doing. It's really just tremendous work. And then we can move into what Fields Jackson is doing as the CEO of College Diversity Network and Racing Toward Diversity magazine. We'll follow that up with the grant funding opportunities that are available. Certainly, this won't be an extensive list of the funding opportunities, but hopefully it kind of stimulates some interest and some thinking about what you might do with those funds if you were able to receive them. And then we'll move toward the CDW team with Curtis and Tremaine to talk about additional stimulus funding opportunities and some great use cases for that technology that you can purchase. We'll move into Fields slides.
Thank you. I'm Fields Jackson, the CEO of Racing Toward Diversity magazine, online publication. We've been around about 15 years now, focused on the business case for diversity. We have we are strictly digital now. We pivoted from a print magazine about 6 years ago, and now we put out a daily newspaper. We get content from thought leaders all over the world. I've been doing this for about 15 years, and believe it or not, diversity has become a hot topic in the last number of years. But again, we talk about the business case for diversity. Our whole mantra is, if you don't believe in diversity, it doesn't make you a bad person. But if you do believe in diversity, what are you doing about it? Best practices from hiring to board of directors to staffing to supplier diversity, et cetera. And we share those stories with our readership. Next slide. A little bit about me. I wear a number of hats, all joyfully. I call myself a chief cheerleader. I'm the chief cheerleader. We look for talent. I'm also the president of the College Diversity Network. I'm an adjunct professor at about 10 HBCUs now. My goal is to get up to about 25. We just purchased a mobile classroom, and we visit a number of HBCUs and meet with students directly. And we also talk to career services, we talk to alumni, and again, my whole thing is we show up and we've got about 200 to 400 jobs, and we become a pretty attractive source when we say, who needs a job? That cuts right down to it. That's who I am. We get right down to it. If you got jobs, let's get you placed. One of the things, I was the former director of the HBCU Business Deans Roundtable. A task I joyfully did for about 4 years. The HBCU Business Deans Roundtable, for folks that don't know it, there's over 100 HBCUs. 85 of them have business schools, and it represents 265,000 students. So they now have a full-time director. My role was to help raise the profile of the group. I was glad to do that. And again, I've taken that, and I still work with a lot of the HBCUs, as you can tell. But again, that was a thing that got me exposure to a lot of great talent on these campuses. On social media, I'm on everything you could think of. So LinkedIn, Twitter, the whole thing. My children have told me they will disown me if they catch me dancing on TikTok. So I'm leery with TikTok right now. But if they catch me dancing on TikTok, I may have to attend my Thanksgiving alone. So everything else I'm on. So if you connect with me, I will absolutely connect with you. Next slide. Just a little bit about, how we've been recognized. This is, we've been recognized recently by a number of organizations. Again, I'm pretty sure, Andrew, that you'll share the slide. So again, if you Google diversity, we tend to pop up. But some of our social media accomplishments. Next slide. Recently, there's a company called Onalytica. They're based in London, England. They do programs, programs for most of the top corporations on the planet. After George Floyd, my world changed. We have been doing it all, but again, after George Floyd, there was a shift, a noticeable shift in the diversity conversation, where I think people got to see for the first time what was going on in different people's worlds and got to see it real time. During that time, as you can tell, there was a lot of conversations around diversity. So everybody's, diversity this, diversity that, you have Black Lives Matter, et cetera. Analytica, who measures social media conversations around the world, actually started to track and said, okay, who's saying things and and what happens. And it's one thing to say something, but again, what they were measuring is, okay, what's the impact? So if you say something, does it translate? Do people share it? What happens with that conversation? So when they ran their analytics on gender equality and diversity, and I had no idea who Analytica is. I'm a big fan of theirs now, as you can tell, but they notified me that I was number 14 in the world around that conversation, which was actually impressed my kids. But I was also number 5 in that conversation. So as far as thought leadership, who was driving that conversation, the 15 years of work came to a head where we were seen as one of the thought leaders in that discussion. So Analytica, I mean, if you go and look at your companies might be being tracked by Analytica. If they're part of that, it'd be great for you to find out where your company stands in certain discussions. Doesn't have to be diversity, but where do you stand? Where do you stand with yourself? Where do you stand with your peers? Who's talking about you in a good way? Who's talking about you in a bad way? So who are the thought leaders around these discussions? Sometimes they're athletes, sometimes they're politicians, and sometimes there are other folks, and I happen to be one around this space. So what we're going to do is, I had no idea I had this type of voice and megaphone. We're going to push it for the folks that are doing great stuff. So I won't talk bad about anybody, but again, if you're doing some great stuff, even if you're not part of our network, and we promote a lot of folks, we will share your best practices. That's what we want to do. What's working? Next slide. Some of our demographics, we do a lot with women's organizations. The folks that say, hey, they can't find women on their board, I just say, hey, don't say that out loud anymore, because there's women, half the planet's women. So let's find women that can sit on your board, not only sit on your board, run your company. Early career internships. I'm a professor, so I'm in front of a lot of students looking for jobs. That's our early touch point. Careers, and you talk about jobs. If you got jobs, let's have a discussion. If you don't have jobs, go talk to somebody else. That's, we think, putting skin in the game. You got jobs, employment opportunities, and sometimes things change. That's where we believe we can help and get careers in front of folks that may not know these opportunities exist. We've got some strong relationships with Hispanic and Asian associations, and we've got extremely strong relationships with the HBCUs. From not only the business deans, but the presidents, the provosts, et cetera. We're getting these great job opportunities in front of schools, probably the 65 schools that most people never heard of that are HBCUs, that are just putting out some great talent. So we get some great opportunities in front of some folks that can now have an opportunity to shine. So that's our demographics. Next slide. A little bit about our reach. Again, when we go into what we did and who we're talking to, you can see, the bulk of our conversation in the United States, but we have thought leaders and people that we contact all around the world. Next slide. Our secret weapon. About 6 years ago, we started to build customized job boards for schools. It's free to the school, free to the students. And we started to build these job boards for a lot of the smaller HBCUs, with the premise that, again, a lot of folks go to the big schools like Howard and Morgan, and we get it, but there was great talent on these smaller schools. So we had companies that were saying they couldn't find talent. So we built these job boards, and like Albany State, it's down in Georgia. The power behind the board was that and it's free to the school, free to the student, you put your job on the board, and not only would the students at Albany State see it, but it would network on all these other boards. That's where the exposures, our views went up, and that's where Analytica, because we were having these conversations. So you put a job on the board, and again, the student checks the job out, and usually you're on the page for a long time. So our conversations, our penetration shot through the roof. This is where we became noticed by the Analyticas and the other companies of the world, having these powerful conversations on these campuses around the country. This got us a lot of exposure, and this was our secret weapon. And again, we lean into this very hard as we go forward, bringing opportunities to these students and to our population. Next slide. We are September 28th, we're going to have our 6th virtual career fair. We started the career fairs back in February 20. We went out to, and we started this, you would have thought we had a crystal ball, and I'm going to make sure I don't run over time, guys. We had a crystal ball, but we started this before the pandemic. And our thought was we're going to go to some of the smaller schools like Tougaloo College and some of the schools that, you know, you got to drive down to Jackson, Mississippi and drive 4 hours west. Nobody's going, but there's some students down there. And if we can get some great companies to get their jobs in front of these students, then we can get the presidents, the provosts to sort of get us in front of their best students that just need an opportunity. So we started this. We went out to all 111 HBC, 107 HBCUs. At the beginning, people said, "Hey, you know what? It feels we're going to have a career fair. So, you know, thank you for the information, but we're going to have a career fair on our campus." Well, like the crystal ball, the pandemic hit and nobody could go anywhere. Our phone blew off the hook. This is where we took off during the pandemic because nobody could go anywhere. So we got this out in front of everybody. We had 79 of the 111 HBCUs participate. We think the number's higher. We also had 115 other colleges participate. My example is there was a kid from Eastern Oregon. I had to ask him, I said, "Son, you're from Eastern Oregon. How did you find out about this? There isn't an HBCU within 8 states of you." He said, "Yeah, I go to Eastern Oregon, but my brother goes to Morgan." This was getting shared in those networks where people said, "Here's a great opportunity. Look at these great companies, and here's a credible source." You can see we were going to undergraduates. 51% were graduate or alumni. So we penetrated, we believe, a market where we got to some great talent. Next slide, and got a few more, and we'll wrap up. Here's the breakdown. Our demographics were off the chain. 54% female, 46% male, 80% self-identified as Black. It still was diverse: Asian, Hispanic, white, Native American. But again, of the folks that self-identified, 80%. Are you willing to relocate? Again, we went to the deans, provosts, and we said, who are the kids that are looking to move? Don't send me the kid that wants to stay in Orangeburg, South Carolina. Send me the kids that are looking for opportunities. That's why our relocation numbers are extremely high. We're not talking to the kid that doesn't want to go, that wants to go back home. We're talking to those students that are looking to be global citizens. You can see the breakdown between alumni and the graduates. We're also going to be doing more mid-level hiring because we tapped into that alumni network. Again, that now the deans, provosts, and the presidents know their alumni for the past 10, 20 years. So if you've got great opportunities, we know a network that can get these opportunities in front of some folks and then help pre-screen some of these folks for you. Next slide. Just the breakdown of where the HBCUs are. Again, we had 115 other schools, so we have a national program. We are going to plot those other schools, but that's where that's where our sweet spot is. We're talking to the presidents, the chancellors, the provosts, and we're showing up on campus saying we got jobs. So we get the attention of the presidents, the chancellors, and the provosts because Mr. Jackson's out in the truck and he's got 200 jobs. Who wants a job? Go out and see him. That's what we do. We're getting real time virtual. Now we're still doing the virtual, but we're getting real time in front of the students and the staff. Next slide. Positions, you can see the breakdown. Next slide. Some of the things that we did, we've done seminars with Merck and HP where we brought leadership in, we brought their employee resource groups in, they talk about what the company does, and we have hiring sessions out there. So it's a way to get the schools to get their top students in front of these companies, for the students to see people that look like them that work at these companies and the opportunities. Connect with me on LinkedIn, do these things to now start to build a network. These have been very effective, very powerful, and we're going to continue. Next slide. Just some of the companies we work with, from HP, Merck, KPMG, Diageo, JLL. Next slide. Some of the federal agencies. Our last career fair, we had 6 of the Federal Reserve Banks attend. My goal is to get all 12. Again, to get opportunity at NASA, to get opportunities in front of some schools that probably would not see them before. But again, what happens is when the companies start to see, people show up from these schools that they, like, where the heck is Paul Quinn? And you start to see the quality of these students. It does change perceptions, where maybe, there's a way maybe we need to fish in a larger pond. Maybe we need to extend our network. So this has been extremely powerful for us. Our last seminar, career fair, we had 50 companies. We're hoping to expand that to about 75 companies. Next slide, I think this is the last. And this is some of the nonprofits that we work with. CEO Gold Standard, they do cancer research for all of the pharma companies. They just put me on their board, so we're able to get, again, these companies and their opportunities, not only in front of the schools, but also in front of our network. Next slide. And I think that's it. So Andrew, thank you again for the opportunity. And Andrew knows I'm a cheerleader. So we get an opportunity, and I only cheer for my team. So if you're on my team, you're part of our network, we're cheering. If you're not, you know what, we don't boo you, but we remain silent. So Andrew, I once again, I appreciate that, and also big fan of what Geoff Foster is doing out in NC A&T. Geoff actually had me come out as an adjunct professor, because Geoff is an adjunct professor at NC A&T. So he has me come out and talk to his students. And again, there's no doubt about the talent that's sitting in these rooms, sitting in front of folks like Geoff Foster, that again, if you're serious about it, we can get those folks in front of you. So thank you.
Thank you as well, Fields.
Very good. My name is Geoff Foster. I'm the CEO and president of Core Technology Molding Corporation. We're an advanced manufacturer doing plastic injection molding in Greensboro, North Carolina. And we're currently on a campus of North Carolina A&T State University. They have a satellite campus about 3 miles away from the main campus. And I'm going to let you go to the next slide, Kimberly, if that's okay. All right. Give you a little history. I founded this company back in 2006. So this is our 16th year in business. Created the idea while I was an MBA student at Wake Forest in an entrepreneurship course. I'm also an adjunct professor at North Carolina A&T since 2007 in the applied engineering department. I teach some polymer processes, composites, plastic part design. But in the manufacturing piece, we hire interns every semester, and several of them turn into full-time positions in our engineering department. All right, very good. So I just mentioned the facility. This is the new facility at Gateway Research Park, which is a joint venture between North Carolina A&T and UNC Greensboro. On the manufacturing side, we manufacture 24 hours a day, 7 days a week here. So we have different certifications that are required for advanced manufacturing. One being ISO 9001, another ISO 14001, which is for environmental. We have 2 medical grade clean rooms, a class 10,000 and class 1,000. And that's really dedicated to Merck, Pfizer, and some other biological pharmaceutical customers. We also have an automotive IATF 16949, and that's required to be a tier 1 automotive supplier. And we are tier 1 to BMW, Volvo and Mack trucks, and now recently Volvo cars out of Charleston. We have some Six Sigma black belts that have gone through BMW training. We have some quality inspection equipment with CMM and vision system. We've also gone through a gap analysis, so we want to get ISO 13485 for medical device, and we have some master molders that have been certified in-house. So we really focus on zero defects, quality improvement, and regulatory compliance. You can move forward, Kimberly, please. So when we talk about growth, we've been here almost 4 years, and there are other opportunities that we're seeing with other HBCUs that are very interested in us replicating this model. One being Cheney University in the Philadelphia area, Pennsylvania, St. Augustine University in Raleigh, and Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And what we really want to do is work with the HBCU and the developer of the land and the building to build another world-class manufacturing space that has medical grade clean rooms and required certifications to meet biological pharmaceutical customer requirements. Here at Core Technology, we hire, train, and develop STEM students to manufacture and assemble single-use products for customers. This has really created a talent pipeline by working with biological pharmaceutical customers to create an advanced manufacturing curriculum and training requirements. Core Technology leadership trains the students, hires interns, and they can evolve into full-time opportunities at Core Technology and Merck. And I have to go on to say some of our interns currently work at BMW, HP, Volvo, Mac, and Pfizer. Okay, Kimberly, please. In this model, you'll see that we're really focused primarily on the biological pharmaceutical. And that was really driven by COVID, and we pivoted where we are producing product 24 hours a day for the biological pharmaceutical. There's some really other strong areas that we're working with alternative energy, with EV. So we're making parts for BMW, for Germany, China, Russia, and South Africa, for their electric vehicle hybrids for X3, X4, appliance, aerospace, heavy truck, and automotive. The automotive and the heavy truck are going to require lighter vehicles. So we're actually working with a supplier in South Carolina to utilize hemp with the polymers. Same situation with the aerospace industry. Everyone's trying to get lighter, and that will impact fuel consumption. Okay, Kimberly, next one, please. Here are some of our top customers, and I mentioned some of them, but we've grown to about 50% biopharm in the last 2 years, and when we pivoted. So Eli Lilly, Pfizer, and Merck are in that space. And we're about 30% automotive with BMW manufacturing, Volvo cars, and the automotive is segmented that market with the heavy truck. So the heavy truck falls under automotive with the Volvo and Mack trucks. We also have some Husqvarna outdoor lawn equipment and Parker Hannifin. So these are our top customers. Okay, Kimberly. On the left, you'll see one of our clean rooms where we are doing assembly for HPV, which is a vaccine for teenagers, male and female, for cancer. And then we have a new clean room proposed for Q4 of this year. So we've been working very closely with Andrew, with the economic development, the EDA, but this is what our next expansion will look like in our current facility, where this will be a class 10,000 clean room as well, doing injection molding and assembly. Okay, Kimberly. Currently, this is what we're producing in our class 10,000 clean room, which is ISO 7 certified. And we're going to produce about 100 million plunger rods in 2023. So the different colors are really for the nurse to mistake proof. Poker yolk is what we call it, so they don't give the wrong vaccine to a patient. So the purple is influenza, the green is shingles, and then there's others, there's lime, there's orange. All of those colors are for chickenpox, measles, mumps, rubella, but high volume, and we'll produce 100 million next year alone in our clean room. Thank you, Kimberly. Talking a little bit about our next phase of the expansion. We've already expanded where we doubled our clean room capacity, but this is where we're working with the EDA, where we're looking for a $3.2 million investment. The city has already committed to about 25%, $750,000 for the infrastructure. It'll take about a year to complete. We will be doing clean room molding and assembly. Merck, Pfizer, Eli Lilly, to name a few. We have some others that are very interested as well. Corning Pharmaceutical is one. This would create about 10 to 12 full-time jobs. And there would also be a capital investment from Core Technology of about $2.6 million for injection molding machines, robots, and the class 10,000 clean room. So again, this is the investment from Core Technology but we're also requesting the $3.2 million investment for the expansion of the facility. Thank you, Kimberly. This is a blueprint of the existing facility that's in black, and the red is showing the expansion. And we will go through that wall. That wall would come down a portion of it. So we would, and that's in red, where we would add additional machines to add capacity. Again, we're operating 24/7. So we have a first, second, and third shift. And then we also have a weekend shift. They work 2/12, 7P to 7A and 7A to 7P. And this is what we would like to replicate at other universities.
Really tremendous stuff you're doing here. And I hope as you guys are, viewing all of this information, you're able to start seeing some of the overlaps in their interactions. HP, Merck, a couple of the other large organizations. There's a way that these individuals are setting up a bit of an ecosystem here. There's a lot of potential, and my hope now is to discuss some of the funding opportunities that you can seek to either, again, work directly with Fields and Mr. Foster, or again, just trying to think about, what you would be doing with that money in your own realm. You obviously have very specific and unique needs for your own organizations based on your geography, your demographics, and so on. My goal is just to tell you about what funding is coming down the pike here, and hopefully you see something that resonates with you with respect to job creation, networking, potentially improving broadband and connectivity opportunities. And we'll just kind of jump into the funding here. So just a brief overview of what we do is Learn, Design, Apply. We have approximately 20 plus years of experience as a company in grants management, writing, program development, relationship management, and again, just trying to set up ecosystems, helping groups that are underserved or unable to navigate the complexities of funding and stimulus money, to hopefully find appropriate projects and matching uses of those funds, and align that to large grant programs and stimulus dollars. So we help you identify, secure, and manage all of that funding, and hopefully provide some direction for the more technical aspects. We know that you guys are able to tell your best story. We're basically trying to align ourselves with you to cross all the T's, dot all the I's, and hopefully, get you to a spot where you're able to provide a very competitive application. Since over the last 3 years that I've been working here, we've been able to expand into broadband, school safety, various energy savings and engineering projects. We've been working obviously with Mr. Foster and Fields to expand our reach for the networking opportunities and hopefully expand our grasp of what exactly the needs are through various minority serving institutions, Hispanic serving institutions, in the HBCU system. And then to date, we've accessed and touched over $1 billion in funding as a group. So growing a lot with all the stimulus money coming through legislation, but hopefully able to access a lot more of that in the near future. Next slide, please. So just diving right in, if there are any groups that are located in rural areas or want to expand services to rural areas, the USDA Distance Learning and Telemedicine is our flagship program. It's through U.S. Department of Agriculture, and it's really to help extend to rural communities, impoverished communities that have trouble accessing education, healthcare, workforce development opportunities, and really just public resources in general. One of my favorite stories for a particular project here was we were able to connect a group in Alaska, just the tundra of Alaska, to have a video communication with the International Space Station. That this town, doesn't even have a cow. They've never seen a cow in real life before, and they're able to have a friendly chat with some astronauts on the International Space Station. I think a more relevant example that we have with the HBCU system is working with Southern University to expand law education, basic law education services out to rural communities that can't access pro bono lawyers. And there's just a huge barrier to being able to access information such as, filing a custody order or low-income taxpayer paperwork. Really seemingly simple things, or they should be simple, but they can be fairly convoluted and complicated to get through on your own and without the help of someone who knows the law very well. I think we've all been to the DMV. Think about that, just in multiples of trying to fill out that type of paperwork, and not just having someone who can provide guidance for you. So getting to the total funding that we see every year, it's about $50 to $60 million that we can access, and you can apply for up to $1 million per application, with a 15% match requirement compared to the federal dollars. So you can build up to, let's say, $1.15 million project in total. We are expecting this timeframe to be, fairly soon, probably October or November of this year, and you get about 60 days to apply. So we can really begin kind of building projects out right now in order to prepare for that application process that happens very likely in October or November of this year. And just looking at the eligible uses of funds, this is more of a capital expenditure project. You're looking at hardware, software, and potentially broadband facilities. So improving the networking to facilitate those video calls that help you access education, healthcare, and so on. And then looking again at the priority focuses, rurality. If you have any sort of ability to reach out to tribal communities and provide services on tribal lands, or focus on the opioid epidemic. Those would be the major priority focuses there. And if you want to just move forward to the next slide, and just give a brief example of, again, Southern University. Looking at the average project, we're looking at low graduation rates for high school, low educational attainment for post-secondary education, and low median household incomes. As we say in the grant world, if you're serving communities that aren't doing well, that's a good thing. And so bad equals good. We're trying to serve the most underserved and unserved communities through these funds. And so, if you're focusing on providing your services, whether that be education or healthcare or so on, to these communities that just don't have adequate access to those resources, that is considered, a priority for their funding. Moving on to the next slide. So you can just see, across the state of Louisiana, they are located, Southern University is located in Baton Rouge. It's a metropolitan area, but they're able to extend their services to an additional 6 locations just in this last round that are very much in highly impoverished and rural areas. And they're able to provide that basic law educational services. Doesn't provide a certification for anything. It's really just trying to help people out with, again, understanding how to file forms, and receive just general guidance on being able to improve their lives. Next slide, please. This to me is probably the most exciting program that we have coming out in the near future. This is through NTIA. Many of you might be familiar with this from the Connecting Minority Communities program. That's another program that went out under NTIA. We're expecting the award announcements to come out soon. But I believe this is going to be just a larger and more expansive program for that. So there was about $300 million that went through for the Connecting Minority Communities program that was specifically for HBCUs, HSIs, and MSIs. This is going to be for communities at large. And just thinking about the ability to repurpose your Connecting Minority Communities grant application, you already have much of the narrative already created to explain your communities, the impact that you would have. There's going to be about $250 million per year for this program. And again, it can overlap for very similar activities that you had wanted to do for that Connecting Minority Communities program. Looking at broadband adoption as being the primary objective of this. That can include healthcare, education, workforce, and some hybrid projects there. But you're really just trying to promote the usage of broadband to improve daily life. And if it's difficult to access, whether it's infrastructure related, so there's just not enough broadband facilities in your area, or if it's an affordability issue, it's just not accessible because you can't afford that. The purpose of this project would be to align technical assistance resources along with funding to get devices into people's hands, teach them how to use things such as like online banking, or filing taxes online, or really just using the internet to improve daily life, along with accessing secondary education opportunities, potentially telehealth and remote patient monitoring opportunities. There are a lot of different ways in which you can make this project specific to your community and to address the needs of your community. If it's lacking either infrastructure access or the ability for people to connect due to affordability issues. Next slide, please. And then the last one that I'll bring up directly ties to Mr. Foster's expansion opportunities that he's seeking. The EDA Economic Adjustment Assistance Program is really about job creation and encouraging private investment in your community. So if you're able to think of projects that would get people trained and certified into jobs that are either available already and just need a certified person to fill that job, or if you're creating something entirely new like Mr. Foster is, there is about $300 million in funding per year to apply to. This is split regionally, and you can access potentially up to $5 million of that for construction and non-construction projects. Mr. Foster, I'm not sure if you wanted to spend a minute or two talking about your interest in expansion at NCA&T or beyond, but would be happy for you to come in for a minute or two.
Dollars of infrastructure here at North Carolina A&T on the campus and connect that to our building. We're also, as you mentioned, would make an investment from core of about 2.6 for capital equipment, robotics, automation, and then we have the buy-in from the city chamber of commerce for about 25% of that $3.2 million. So we have buy-in locally and federal as well. But I think it's very important that, you know, being on the campus has helped us grow exponentially, Andrew.
About how many jobs did you plan to create with that expansion opportunity?
Yeah, that's another 12 jobs, Andrew. And because we're operating 24/7, it would be several people across 5 different shifts. So about 3 people per shift. So 15,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, 12 to 15 people.
So, Mr. Foster, I know you are also interested in potentially expanding your operation across the country and potentially landing at different HBCU sites to decentralize your supply chain. You know, there's a lot of savings in being able to create something in 3D print something closer to where it's being delivered. But did you have any potential expansion opportunities you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, so there are 3 that I mentioned in the presentation, but several of our customers are further away than 3 hours. So our customers pay for all the shipping costs. So they would love for us to be closer to their facility, whether the Philadelphia, West Point, PA, or even in the Baton Rouge area of Louisiana. There's some automotive going on down there. Some of our customers are very interested in that. And in the Raleigh area, the RTP is really in the South, the leader in the medical device and biological pharmaceutical. So several of our customers are there, but even more so potential customers are in that region. And that's very attractive to not just core technology, but our customers as well as the HBCUs. So some really low-hanging fruit.
Fantastic. And maybe one last question I can ask you while we're on. Sure. Is I think you were mentioning a potential certification program that would be available through your company.
Yes. So having been an adjunct for almost 18 years now, I'm starting to write some of the curriculum for the advanced manufacturing, in particular the polymers. So what we'd like to see is we would have a way to have a certification program where we're teaching the courses and then getting some type of certification where we're doing Six Sigma training, but also in advanced manufacturing with STEM. There would be some certificate attached. So when they do graduate from college, they would also have a certification that we would sign. And some of our key customers are very interested in working jointly together. For example, have a core technology and BMW certificate when they graduate from college. So
hopefully everybody on here, you know, if you're listening in, this is starting to stimulate some ideas. It could be very specific to your community, but there might also be some opportunities for expansion, if you land in the right geographic area. And I know, Geoff, your business is exploding. It seems like every time I talk to you, you have a new customer that is making billions of dollars a year in revenue is talking to you about expansion opportunities. So I think that's really amazing. And again, these funding opportunities can do not only the job creation and potential construction and non-construction projects, but if there's an interest in the adjunct professorship or the expansion opportunities and connecting to all of those virtual career fairs and everything, there's funding out there for that to help you build out those facilities that might be needed to bring that to your campus. Next slide, please. I think we're going to be moving on to Curtis, who's with CDW, and he's going to mention a little bit more about the stimulus funding that's available.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. So Andrew mentioned kind of the current year-over-year type of grants that are available to you. I wanted to go back and remind you of the funding you already should have received from the federal government. Just in the last year, 2 years, 3 years now, we received over almost $250 billion in education, and in higher ed particularly over $70 billion. So there's still a lot of money available to us, and it should now all been distributed. A couple key things here to note, you have your regular funding from your higher ed PERF funding, and then you also have your distribution that was just for your HBCUs and MSIs and the rest of those groups. So even though we had this original purse, we also have this secondary purse as well that can be utilized. Very broad in usage, and we'll go in a little more detail on that coming up. So that's kind of the general overview. Let's take a little bit closer look on the next slide at HBCUs in particular. So within the way the funding is set up on the federal side, you have HERF, and then it's HERF A, and then HERF A1, HERF A2, HERF A3. So the HBCU and MSI funding is under HERF A2, and it has a different set of criteria and a different broken down. So you received your A1 money, and you've also received your A2 money. So you received two different chunks of money if you're an HBCU or an MSI as well. A couple key things here to note. On this page, the original obligation date I have is 2022. It actually has been extended to 2023. So you have another full year to expend your funds. So don't think, oh, I've hit a wall, I've hit a time frame, or I no longer can. You do have the opportunity to move forward and to expend into next year. The other key thing I always want to point out, you should have received at this point roughly 6 different payments. One from the original HERF, so your A1 amount, and then from HERF 2, which is from CRSA, HERF 3, which is from the American Rescue Plan. So you have that funding that should have came. And then on top of that, you should have received your dedicated HBCU funding as well as your A2 funding. So if you're looking, you should have a larger total amount that came through. Now, one of the nice things about this is in some situations, the actual HBCU funding was actually larger than the original HERF funding you may have received, which is a benefit in the fact that they're focusing on that group of colleges and universities. So let's take a little closer look at how the money can be spent on the next slide. So usage of funds. So as we go through, they've always said with all the HERF funding, hey, you need to use it to address things like transition to distance education or faculty and staff training. It was a very kind of nebulous type of speak of how that can be utilized. The original one was to cover any costs associated with significant changes to delivery infrastructure. Really what this meant was very kind of odd. What became a question was, what does that actually mean? So really the feds kind of said, well, that's a lot broader than we think it is. So just kind of below down to the bottom here, and it's some ways that we've seen institutions utilize this funding. Obviously, a lot of institutions went out and bought laptops and tablets. That was kind of like the first run of what are we going to do with the money? A lot of them then focused on safety, so sanitation, PPE, contact tracing, those types of things became next of it. But where we really started seeing a large chunk of investment was around those connections. How do we improve the Wi-Fi connections on our campus? How do we extend our network infrastructure or improve it to adapt for this increase in student access or online learning? That became a huge part of it. And then finally, along those lines, came a question around cyber security. Can this funding be utilized for cybersecurity? Because we have so many more people. And all those questions, the feds basically came back and said yes. These are things you can do with it. We're seeing institutions utilize it for this. They have a direct connection back to distance learning or direct connection back to the original use of the purpose of the funding. And then obviously we have things like classroom where we sell cameras, a lot of distance learning, displays, and increasing and improving for, I can put a display up for the professor who's doing a distance learning. I can see him in the background. And then even things that became a little bit unusual were things like furniture. So if we wanted to move from a double seated, a table where two people sat next to each other to individual seats, those were all things that we were able to utilize. I think one of the most creative uses I saw the funding was on things like VDI, the ability to say, okay, I can't get on campus to access this resource. Is there a way I can bring the resource to me? And so that became one of those options as well. So all of those are ways we've seen the funding being utilized, which is great. That's applicable for your A1 funds and applicable for your A2 funds. What gets a little bit different is with the A2 funds, which is the HBCU direct funds, is there's no requirement to split that funding up between institutional costs and student grants or student loans or student payments. All the money can be taken and utilized towards institutional costs if you so desire. So you have that option to do that as well. The other thing with A2 that was a little different was those funds can be utilized for construction projects. None of the other funds from HERF can be utilized for that, but A2 can be. So now you're not going to be able to go out and build a clean room, but if you need to make changes to your facilities or you need to upgrade your facilities, everything from HVAC systems to just improving the wiring in some areas, this funding, your HBCU funding, does give you that option. So there's a lot of flexibility now. You just got to make sure you're using the right set of funding resources. So one thing I just want to leave with here is when you're trying to be idea of what you're doing, as long as you tie it back to COVID, tie it back to a need to prepare for students to be able to learn, you're in good shape. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Deb, who's going to give you a little more specific ideas around, this is kind of a general idea how funding can be utilized, but she's going to give you some more ideas of what kind of programs and areas it can impact within your institution.
Thanks, Curtis. Hi, everybody. I just want to say hi. I'm going to go off camera just in case my Wi-Fi decides to be less than stable, but I wanted to do a quick wave. I am with CDWG. I'm a capture manager, and what I get to do is work with our customers, our strategic partner customers, on not what's going on today, but what we think is going to go on in the future. And with what everybody has been talking about here, thinking in the future, how do we build, how do we hit those long-term goals? I want to really ask you to shift to
Deb, we've lost your audio.
things. First is oh no.
Okay, you're back actually, but we did miss a minute there.
Okay, I'm going to just be as quick as possible. I'm asking you to shift two things, your thinking and your project timeline. Funding with what we heard from even from Fields talking about how he looks at things, how he grows his universe. I want to push you to think in a different way, and that's to be descriptive rather than prescriptive, especially when it comes to technology. Instead of thinking, I want to replace the equipment in my data center, think about where you want to be, give that description to the technology solutions providers around you. Instead of replace the equipment in my data center, I would challenge you to think about, I want to enable my data center for the future. I want to create a data center that will meet the needs of my students, of our faculty, of our families, everybody that uses your data. Give those problems and what your goal is to your technology advisors and partners, and let them create and come back to you with a solution that also will take better advantage of the monies that are available, the technology roadmaps that are available. So shift, not what and then on timelines. I know a lot of what we do in technology and in projects is today transactional, right? I've got this project, it has to be fixed in 30 days. So on this one, I'm going to challenge you to pick your chin up and look a little bit further out the horizon. With all we know that what's going on today, where do we think we want to be in a year? And let's start thinking about another year past that to create that natural flow and evolution of technology and get the investment on these very precious funds. Again, through descriptive conversations with your providers, let them help you create something that you didn't know and you didn't know you needed. That will also extend the lifetime of your money and your investment and the benefits that come back from that to your students, your faculty, and your families. So those are probably the two things. And I hope that if I leave you with nothing else, it's just shift your thinking and shift your project timelines to take advantage of the wealth of knowledge, funding, and solution technology that's out there. That's my quick spin on how you can insert your mindset into all of this amazing technology and funding that's available for our HBCUs. Again, faculty, students, and family. That's kind of the way I think about it. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Tremaine, who's going to talk to you more about what all these solutions may look like. What is the real secret? And again, from that descriptive, what falls under this umbrella? So Tremaine.
Yes, thanks for that, Deb. And as Deb said, my name is Tremaine Martin. I'm the sales manager for the National HBCU team here at CDW. And for those of you who don't know who CDWG is, CDW is an education, CDW Education rather, is a global systems integrator that impacts over 75 million students across 34 countries. We enable and empower over 17,000 educational institutions to get the most out of our transformational impact of our partners' technology. And with that said, right, as a company, CDW is now aligning our efforts to partner with purpose in helping HBCUs create equity and access through technology, solutions, and support. So when we look at this slide here, right, there's a continuous evolution of higher education priorities. When we look at remote learning, right, organizations are recognizing that the extended e-instruction and e-operations come with a multitude of challenges. Teachers need routine for assigning work and assessing the learning, as well as maintaining student collaboration. And students need to be able to easily access all their assignments and collaborate with their teachers to ask questions. And there are other challenges for remote learning, including a lot of the securing the endpoint or the device for the students and the staff, and making sure that we're providing them the technical support and enabling the network access for the connectivity and ensuring the equity of that access, right? And then when we look at some of the active learning environments, students and faculty alike now, they all expect flexibility and inviting technology enhanced learning spaces that boost active learning. And engagement in these sort of productive and collaborative online activities, learning becomes more prevalent, and collaboration and visualization and technology will continue to evolve as the years go on. So really, when you look at it, both students and teachers, they need access to innovative platforms that are engaging, and making sure that within the online classes and the breakout rooms that they're continuing that equity of access there and learning. And then we look at cybersecurity, right? When we talk about access and the end user, we want to make sure that we're balancing the desire for that on-demand access to information that they need at the campus, and making sure that there's also the need to protect the privacy rights of each student and faculty member at the institution, right? We want to make sure that we're guarding that sensitive data that presents the ongoing challenge for a lot of CISOs within your institutions. And this really intensifies as the mobile device multiply and the cyber threats continue to get more sophisticated. And on the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit more in depth about how you can understand some of CDW's capabilities as it relates to the full stack. So with what CDW is doing here, right, within our core competencies is really, we look to add value and relationship with our customers and clients beyond just being a fulfillment partner for you. CDW, we have the technological expertise across all these categories, and we achieve at the highest level here. So we basically are able to help you as our clients scope, design, and implement across all these disciplines with services with a services first mindset. We continue to look at ourselves in the mirror here at CDW and really consider some of the customer feedback that we get over the years. And we want to make sure, right, that we're able to deliver upon your desired and impactful outcomes for your students. So a little bit more on the next slide, we'll look at how CDW has done some of this, right? Over the course of, since CDW began over 32 years ago, within the last few years, we've made several strategic acquisitions. The first one here being IG&W, which we now have incorporated and changed into CDW's DVS practice, which stands for Digital Velocity. We made the acquisition back in 2019. And on that side of our house, there are actually two sides there. One, we have delivery engineers that focus on infrastructure as a code, cloud native, application modernization, and software development, as well as data operations such as artificial intelligence and machine learning. On the other side of the house, within DVS, that's what we call our staff augmentation practice. And really the staff augmentation practice is here to assist all of our clients with what we're seeing today within the workplace, which is basically the Great Resignation, where people are leaving to go do other things within other industries now that we're all working from home for the most part because of COVID. It's really changed the landscape of how we're able to do business and how we're able to work here from home, like myself, right? I've been sitting here in my home working for the last 2+ years. And when we look at that, sometimes that creates opportunities for people to work where they want to work, even if it's on the other side of the country and still reside, in Florida or Georgia. And so really that's what we bring, to the table with our staff augmentation practice from DVS. And then when we look at Aptris, which we acquired in 2019, Aptris is a distinguished IT service management solutions provider and a ServiceNow elite partner. And the IT service management and digital workflow platforms are rapidly becoming a cornerstone of IT. And ServiceNow is the leader in that space. And it's increasingly being used by all of our clients to drive digital transformations across the organizations. And then with Amplified IT in late 2021, Amplified IT, who some of you may know, is a premier Google partner. And in the education space, they're really specialized in consultancy and assisting with audits for in-depth viewing of your Google environment. And then also making sure that with the community of Google admins that are there, they're continuously learning, as well as focusing on a lot of the best practice and approaches for managing the Google education and making sure that we can support you at the level that you need to be supported. And then when we talk about cybersecurity, again, here is we acquired a company by the name of Focal Point Data Risk in 2021. And basically what this did was this has expanded our existing cybersecurity portfolio and adding depth and breadth to our services in areas such as identity access management, as well as advisory services and risk consulting, as well as some of the cyber workforce development that's out there for you. And that's through our Focal Point Academy as far as the workforce development there. And then with our latest acquisition in 2022 with Sirius, which is the leading provider of secure technology-based solutions with a service-led approach. The focus here is basically for mission-critical areas, which would be hybrid infrastructure, security, digital and data innovations, and then a lot of the cloud-managed services. And with these acquisitions of Sirius and Focal Point, right, it's nearly doubled CDW's number of service engineers, as well as further scale out our cloud, digital, and security services practice. And so I say all that to say is, like, you know, CDW is really here to listen to what, you know, some of the issues that you're having and getting some of your projects done. And then, you know, basically understand what it is that you need and marry those two things with our capabilities, and really be more than just, you know, a fulfillment person or a fulfillment company for you, but really partner with you at the inception of any of your projects, and making sure that we can help you, as I said before, bring the equity of access while securing, you know, PII at your schools. So thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Well, that concludes the presentation for today. If any of you had any questions that you'd like us to answer, just take a couple minutes here and write them into the chat window. I did have one question for Fields. Fields, if you're still on, just to kind of get things going here. So Fields, you, I noticed you recently posted on LinkedIn that you took a position as Chief Diversity Officer with Bonfire Engineering and Construction, and wanted to ask about your experience with that, you know, why you were approached by that company and how things are going so far.
Well, Andrew, that was a great question. Things are going great. Yeah, I just I'm the Chief Diversity Officer of Bonfire, which is a broadband company out in Denver, Colorado. It's a fractional role. So as a matter of fact, Andrew made the introduction. They were talking about providing broadband to underserved markets, primarily in sovereign nations, but also in the dots that connect. HBCUs are also underserved markets that their broadband could use the help. So through Andrew and his support, they've done a really good job of supporting this company. They're on a massive growth phase. They're looking to diversify not only their services, but also their pipeline. They're looking to hire, folks at scale. So it's going extremely well, Andrew. I guess I just made the announcement. It went viral in my network. People say, well, what happened to the magazine? Well, let's look at the magazine. You know, we're doing so. As a matter of fact, more and more companies are now, again, when they look at diversity, even from smaller companies up to the very large companies, where do you start? A lot of companies, again, with the diversity, they may have had a chief diversity officer leave. I mean, diversity is a tough thing. So where do you start? How do you provide metrics? So we were able to sit down with them, and we're going to start to establish a baseline on how do you grow? How do you measure that growth? And then put the procedures and stuff in place to sort of move that forward. My role is I'm looking at in maybe 6 months to a year to be gone, and then sort of bring in that chief diversity officer that takes it forward. But that's opened up an opportunity for companies that the chief diversity officer didn't work out. And again, I'm not sure if people thought that was a serious endeavor, or they just went out and grabbed the first person and put them in that role with no support. But diversity is here. Diversity in not only in your communities with your customers, it's here. So how do you drive that? How do you empower that person to actually not only sit at the executive committee to have a voice on all these decisions? Because diversity, and this is the way we look at it, it encompasses your entire company, from your board to your suppliers to and the way we look at it is not just diversity, how do you get the best talent into your operation? And if you're limiting your talent pool because of, restrictions, you're limiting talent, you're limiting ideas, you're limiting growth. So those folks that have figured it out, it's not singing kumbaya and holding hands, it's getting the right people into the operation, into the facility. The right person, if, it doesn't have to get along, but again, as long as they're not pulling guns. But if you had, Shaquille O'Neal, if everybody had Shaquille O'Neal, great team, but that's a terrible basketball team. Somebody's got to bring the ball down. So you have to get people that now have a different skill set. They may not look like you or talk like you, et cetera. So I'm thrilled, Andrew, at that opportunity. It's opened up some other discussions with other companies that are now, they either hit a wall and they said, hey, we've got, and again, the great resignation. If you think this is a game, people are leaving because, you know, you're not walking the talk. You've got a whole bunch of pictures, but again, when they walk into their business, they don't feel that. They know it's not true. So how do you get that in? And there's companies that have figured it out. And guess where your great resignation? Because they're not just leaving, they're going someplace. And what happens, they're going to the places that, guess what, they treat you good over here. They listen to you. You have opportunities. So it's a war on talent. Some are winning, and I see the ones that are winning. And the programs that you have, I hope. And again, I want to go with the folks at Bonfire, because I hope to bring what they're doing to HBCUs. So again, I saw the light go off, Andrew. Maybe you know you're brilliant at this, Andrew. So you probably got me in this where I go, well, that's a great idea. And Andrew, you know, told me that 2 years ago. But I see that where we're talking underserved markets. Again, it's great to be on Sovereign Nations, and I got a trip out there next week to actually get, you know, feet on the ground and actually get out and see what's happening in some of these communities. But when you say that, immediately I think, you know, I'm on these campuses, and guess what? Sometimes the broadband ain't great on the campus. You know, sometimes, you know, I'm in the middle of campus and it's not great. And then forget about me getting a block away where that whole community is looking to this HBCU as, you know, the place to go. So, you know, you drive down the street and you see the kids, you know, with their back up against the wall at McDonald's looking for. So again, if we can, and I believe we can, Andrew. So I don't want to get in front of my skis here. I believe that we can bring that solution. It's called Bonfire. It's a tremendous company, tremendous group of guys that have done some tremendous work. But again, they're looking to now say, how do we scale? How do we go to our talent pool outside of our normal areas? And if I can be any part of that. And then again, it's amazing when I posted that, I had so many chief diversity officers say, Fields, you know, they looked. So again, it was amazing. The folks that said, hey, you know what, you know, I'm about ready to get out of here. So, you know, so make sure you take care of your people. Long answer to your question, Andrew, but make sure you take care of your people.
That was an amazing answer. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
empower your folks.
And was,
if you don't,
was
somebody
so happy to see that post on LinkedIn. You know, I think you guys will do great things together. There's actually a post in the chat here that might be a good segue. Reading the HBCUs were the prime applicants for Connecting Minority Communities grant program last year. Do you have any feedback on what has been funded, what those projects looked like in terms of project design, and if there will be another round of funding? So starting with what has been funded, I know that there has been kind of gradual outreach over the last couple of months in what's called a curing process. So if there's been some outreach to clarify, you know, the justification of need of the funds, anything for your budgets that were, you know, maybe if there was some additional clarification needed, that would have been outreach from either the NTIA personally or from a group called NIST, N-I-S-T. And so they would just be asking those clarifying questions. And the more of those communications you receive, you know, the more they're just trying to get you into kind of that underwriting phase and that environmental review phase. I believe that is most of the way handled at this point. There was a significant amount of demand for that small bucket of funding, or seemingly small bucket of funding. No one can scoff at $300 million, but there was like $3 billion in applications. You know, just the odds alone on that aren't great for everyone to get their fair share or to get what they needed out of that. We're expecting the awards to be announced sometime later this year. I would assume probably sometime in October would be a good estimate. They were supposed to do that in April, but I think everyone can understand, however frustrating it might be, that NTIA was thrown $70-ish billion to handle, and I don't think they expected, you know, just the amount of groundwork and footwork to happen there to create 5 or 6 new grant programs, to manage all of those applications that came in, give them an adequate review, and to provide that level of communication within a 6-month time frame. So unfortunately, they are delayed. If we can draw on the tribal broadband awards that are coming out, it looks to be about 6 months delayed. So I would assume it's sometime, you know, in October or maybe through the end of the year for those awards to either trickle out or for them to be announced all at once. Looking at the projects in terms of project design, I think they were actually looking for really innovative projects. You know, we were involved with a few. One wanted to set up a cyber operations degree program. So, you know, they wanted to implement this on their campus where they're creating not necessarily a reactive certification or degree, you know, where you're talking about how to course correct after a potential incident. They were talking about proactive, let's say it's called ethical hacking, kind of pressure testing and penetration testing your systems at all times, being able to train people and be certified in some sort of cyber defense program. And that would require hiring additional personnel, getting equipment for students, having what I would see as kind of like a war room where they have all the monitors and stuff. It's kind of like what you see on like a CSI television show or something like that, where you have just a bunch of code on the screen. And so they wanted to really build out like a huge facility to train students on that and to send them out into the workforce, because it's a tremendously needed job skill. There are other groups that wanted to just purely build additional fiber backbone to their campus. One college in South Carolina wanted to invest, you know, over $1 million in improving not only getting fiber to the campus, but improving, you know, the capabilities of their wireless access points around campus, at the dorms. I mean, you talk about being able to access broadband anywhere at any time and the ability to learn remotely. You can attend a course out on your, you know, courtyard square, as opposed to needing to be in a room if you don't feel comfortable with COVID exposure, or you know, seems like a new disease comes out every day on the news. But you know, you're talking about the ability to just improve access to literally anything, but you know, have the overlay of education and kind of that ability to have that on a campus. Fields, I saw you go off mute for a second. Did you want to add
Andrew,
anything there?
if I can put in a plug for Geoff Foster, and I don't want to give him any more work than necessary, but Geoff Foster has an unbelievable business model. He is the only tier 1 manufacturer that I know of that is physically on an HBCU campus. He's in front of 100 students, and again, there are programs, and again, it's as simple as like HP, and again, Andrew was working on this project as well. They have a 3D printer that they work with Geoff on, so Geoff was able to do some modeling, et cetera, but create another business segment in his business where now, and again, if you think about from a training standpoint, I'm training students to do modeling for Merck or what all these companies, and again, now they're solving issues for some of these companies. And again, you know, when he brings it back to the company and says, well, who did this? Well, a couple of my students. Well, those students aren't going, if I know those students fix my 20 billion, they're not going anywhere. So, you know, there's products like a 3D printer that can actually go on your campus that now work on real world problems and actually can become a manufacturer for local people. So you start this manufacturing process right on your campus. And again, I'm not sure if Geoff, you know, I'm not going to loan you out, Geoff, but you know, if he could become an adjunct professor virtually, where now he can help build a curriculum, it now opens up a door, and potentially, you know, you start to attract those types of things. So again, going back to, you know, just having manufacturing on these HBCU campuses. So when people say, I can't find manufacturers, or I can't find these, you know, I can't find talent. Well, if you're creating that with students that are now learning not what happened 20 years ago in the book that I wrote, real world today, it's going into this BMW next week, that changes a lot of discussions, and actually the companies start to look at you differently, like, wow, you know, can you help us with our design? Can you help us with these things? And those create those types of pipelines that now I would hope, like a Geoff Foster goes, hey, you know what, this thing that we solved turned into like a $10 million opportunity. There may be a business case for us to build this an additional plant on your campus. So those are the types of, you know, getting outside the box, you know, what can we be kind of conversations that Geoff Foster, it's amazing. I'm one of his biggest fans about cheerleader. I've seen him do where that now you just transform, you know, the north side of Greensboro. It's just transformed. I mean, there's from tax revenue to the amount of payroll that's going through that thing. Everybody knows. The mayor knows. The governor knows. Everybody sees that. And now it's real numbers that can't. It's amazing. And Andrew, again, just what you're doing and the opportunities that you're putting in front of folks. I tip my hat to you. If again, is there anything I can do to help cheerlead or just open the door or just count me in? So I didn't mean to put that plug in on Foster. I know he's cringing because the guy's working 19,000 hours a day. But Geoff, if I gave you some more work, send me a bill, okay? So just
Okay, thank you.
Well, we're at time. Again, Fields and Geoff, thank you so much for sharing kind of your unique expertise and experiences over the last couple of years. We're going to send out the recording to this and the slides. Again, very, very apologetic for the technical issues right at the beginning, but thanks again to everybody, all the panelists that were able to join in and offer some context and some potential opportunities for collaboration.
Thank you.
All right. Have a nice day, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Be well.